Hey guys, Disler Magic here, and today was Double Ban Monday. That's right, the magical Double Ban Monday, pun intended. So they had the Pioneer Monday ban announcement, but then they also had the General ban announcement. And unfortunately, in the first announcement today, the General one, they decided not to change anything in any format. So, Standard's bad, but it's not in like the absolute raging shit hurricane that it was when Oko was still legal. Cavalcade still needs to go. I literally 1 minute ago just got done playing on Arena against Ral Spell Cloning Land Destruction. Hey, whoever was running that and also playing like a slow jackass at the same time, I hope your computer bursts into flames so that you can never play Arena again. And if it's an HP, it might. So, really, honestly, there's about 7 cards that I think need to go, and if they did, Standard would be, like, amazing right now. But I'd give it maybe a 4 out of 10 on, like, play, fun, fairness, and wide open deck building options without being suppressed by overpowered crap. And we were at about a -1 with Oko, so it's like, yeah, okay, I think they just don't want to push it. They know that people are absolutely livid over Cavalcade not getting banned. And it's legit 1 in 3 to 1 in 4 games that I play against in the highly competitive leagues on Arena. But like all my decks absolutely stomp it in the nuts. It's just an annoying deck. You shouldn't have to feel like, oh, if I don't, stop this, if I slip up or if my deck's a little bit slower, I'm going to lose on turn 4. Or like, I guess turn 5 with that one, that's a little bit slower. It's more of a gradual thing. But by turn 4, you've lost to the board state, so it's the same damn thing. So that really pisses me off that they didn't get rid of that. They didn't get rid of that 7-cost blue steal a land guy because he's an asshole. Obviously, Teferi, people still want him gone. Like, next to nobody runs him, but who cares? He still needs to go. I'd say the same about a couple cards that are so obscure, like, well, who plays that? But when you go up against it, you'll see what I mean. The cards were just clearly an overpowered, unfun, game-ruining mistake. A lot of things really needed to go from Standard, but do you think with this big of an improvement over the wonderful fun we all had in Okotober, that they'd come back around and ban like 5, 6, 7 cards? Probably not, because people are already pissed about that one, but come on. Like, if you're actually mad that Oko got banned, and boo-hoo, there goes my deck, if you didn't see that one coming ahead of time, you're, like, delusional. You're just lying to yourself. So Ian Duke actually wrote, like, a fairly lengthy statement here about why there were no changes in any formats. Usually they just kind of leave it at that. In recent years, Magic has undergone growth in digital play, tabletop, and esports events, and the number of product releases and supported play formats. In that time, it's been increasingly... should have said increasingly. It's become increasingly challenging to schedule banner-restricted change windows in advance, such that we could avoid disruption to major events while still implementing timely changes as needed for each format. Okay, yes, but you guys massively screwed it up, and I'd love to see you admit this. Waiting like a month and a half to ban Oko so that you didn't force, 64 people or 100 people or whatever going to some bullshit tournament to change their decks that nobody watched because it was all Oko versus Oko? That's like layers of mistakes. 1 was coming up with them as an idea in the first place. 2 was pushing them way too far. 3 was approving the card after playtesting it. 4 was not banning it sooner. And 5 was putting the priority of 64 people above the other 10.5 million people that allegedly play Magic. And then, you know what? Another mistake is the amount of money they lost due to Oko. From people quitting the game, not playing, not buying stuff, not playing Arena, not making purchases on it, etc. So I have a much easier policy that would prevent this in the future. Don't print broken cards in the first place. And if you do, if one just seems to slip by you, which they do seem to, ignore the tournaments. Unless it's literally like tomorrow and you don't want people to like have to rebuild their deck on the plane, I would say a week and a half notice is perfectly appropriate for having to rebuild and retest a deck in the absolute emergency situation. I feel like I could rebuild and retest a deck in 3 days. So giving people like 10 days, come on. So that's the lead up that I would give them reasonably. And then still prioritize the players above of our pro players. Unless it's like a tournament with like 1,000 to 2,000 people attending, then boy, that's a lot of people rebuilding stuff. And not everybody has the budget or the long history of winning prizes even in last place that the like more invite heavy tournaments get. Saying here, drop $400 on a new deck when you already bought the plane tickets, that's pretty rough. But for the smaller tournaments where they're all pros, who cares? Legit, who cares? So going forward, we'll no longer be making a commitment in advance to when the next banned and restricted update will be. So that what they're actually doing is just giving up on scheduling them. And they're still going to completely and utterly schedule them around tournaments. So if you're just some average schmo at F&M, screw you. If you're some average arena player, screw you. Still, the Pro League gets priority over you, even though you outnumber them 1,000 to 1. Or actually, it's probably closer to 100,000 to 1. Absolutely ridiculous. So while we still expect changes to come in a similar pace, and we'll always announce changes on a Monday, really? I didn't realize they did that outside of Pioneer. Okay. We'll be allowing some flexibility in the exact week of changes. Honestly, they always take me by surprise. Not like I put them on my damn calendar, so they can put them whenever they want and just tell me that's when they're supposed to be, and I'll take their word for it. So I don't really have a problem with this other than they should completely ignore tournaments and not dance around them at all. This will let us be more agile and responsive with changes when needed while respecting the needs and timelines of competitive events, which you should not do. Ignore them completely. I mean, like I said, 10 days would be nice, but, at the end of the day, screw these people. We'll still do our best to avoid making changes to a format too soon before a major event. Once again, you really should not make that a high priority so as not to negatively impact rich douchebags' plans and preparations who play Magic full-time and could just take 12 hours and build a new deck. That said, given the number of major events now being held nearly every weekend around the world, and the need to make sure we're addressing the health of formats in a timely manner, some conflicts may arise. We'll do what we can to give advance notice if we're able. See, there we go. Finally, they're like, oh, we don't want to mess with your tournament. We don't want to change your plans. We don't want to do this. We don't want to do this. But at the end of the day, screw you, because we have to, because there's a tournament every week. So I'm glad it kind of ended with that, but they're still really kind of leaning heavy into the, we don't want to disrupt tournaments. Here's a thought. Anytime you're going to go to a tournament, have a deck ready and then have a different deck ready, just in case. Just train with the second deck a little bit, know how to run it, have that be your second option, and then maybe even build it, I guess, or have a way to have it built within, a week of a tournament, within a week of leaving, or show up to a tournament with some serious money, because there's a lot of singles there. If that's just the general rule, then everybody would be like, okay, I'm going to my backup deck. I prepared for this. So you know what? If they're not going to say it, I'm going to say it. Do that. And also don't go to the pro level tournaments. Everybody cheats and you're going to lose. Hey, if I'm giving out advice, I might as well give out all the advice. So anyway, the article goes on to say, as an example of what this helps us accomplish, consider the case where we had planned a banned restricted change window for the week before a modern Grand Prix. Under the previous system, even if the metagame were unhealthy, we may have avoided making changes to modern so as not to disrupt players' travel plans. That's a little generous. And preparation for that event. Now, preparations, yeah, travel plans, really? I can't play my deck, so I'm staying home. Really? I mean, get a life. Now we'll be able to position that announcement earlier if urgent changes are needed. Or shortly after the Grand Prix if we need to collect more data before making the right change. Don't rely on tournaments with a very, very tiny amount of people to make your decisions. It's got to be the widest player base only, like exclusively. Because that's the people it affects the most. And once rumors get around and teams start making decisions, it'll look like, a lot of people showed up with this deck. Well, it's overrepresented. It won too much. Well, that's because it was overrepresented. A couple hundred people tops at a tournament is not going to tell you anything other than all these people thought they could win the tournament with this. And here's the results. Like, there might be some left field deck that's really, really good that just word didn't get around, or like only 3 people managed to show up with the deck like that, but entire teams chose like a really safe route. And so the best deck in the world might not even be at the tournament. So making a ban decision based on a tournament, not smart. Based on like MTGO and Arena, very smart. I mean, it's literally 10,000 to like 1 million times more data, because they just celebrated, it wasn't the millionth game, it was like the billionth game of Arena or something. It was absurd. Actually, I don't think it was billion if they have like a couple million players, but, well, I don't know. I've probably played 1,000 matches. I don't think everybody has. I think they celebrated the 100 millionth game. So 100 million data points in that short of a period during the beta, and this is the launch, versus a couple hundred people at a tournament. Wow. A tournament with automatic buys and people agreeing to lie about the results to affect people's points. Yeah, great way to get accurate information, guys. So when they're like, we're banning this because it was 9 out of the top 16. Who gives a shit? Like, seriously, that means nothing. People thought vehicles were hot shit at the SCG Open, and then like 2 days later, nobody played it because it turns out it's an awful deck. It was horribly overrepresented at the tournament because word got around that that was the deck to play. People were too stupid and cautious to play anything that they came up with themselves, so they all played that, and yeah, it made it to the top 16 a lot, but like other people knew better, thankfully. Don't get data from tournaments. So anyway, it goes on to say, we've also learned that, yes, some players may be affected by having their planned deck change or no longer work shortly before an event, but we found another consideration to be more impactful. I really hope the next sentence is the rest of the 10 million active players, because I found that to be a little bit more important, more impactful. The most likely result of an imbalanced or unfun format is that people simply don't play. Really? You noticed that? You noticed that not banning Oko on time probably cost you between $5 and $25 million by my estimate. Really? So the people who just didn't purchase anything, didn't touch Arena, quit permanently, so all their future income together, it's in the million scale, trust me. So they decided to prioritize one stupid tournament that I think at the time was like 4 or 5 weeks out from when people really wanted Oko banned. And the prize money, I believe, was $1 million, maybe 1.5. And they lost way, way more than that. And also, because it was just an Oko-thon and nobody watched it, the stats I saw, they could have given every single individual Twitch viewer $10,000 and still lost less money than they lost by not banning Oko for that time period. They could have pre-built every single tier 1 deck, we'll say the top 25 most winning decks, built them in foil and handed them to every single attendee when they got off the plane, and still cost themselves less money than they lost by not banning Oko on time. That sentence is really significant that they finally realized, quote, the most likely result of an imbalanced or unfun format is that people simply don't play. And I love how they said unbalanced, as in a card is too powerful, or unfun. A deck archetype is not fun to play against, regardless of its power level or like win rate or whatever. It's statistical advantage against the field, whatever you want to say. And the result is players simply don't play. And by play, they mean pay. By players, they mean people who aren't attending the tournaments at all. Does that make sense to everybody? But unfortunately, they go on to say they cancel plans, skip side events, or don't engage in a format that isn't healthy. Now they're back to talking about attendees. Who gives a shit about attendees? Should care about the other 10 million. Once again, those 10 million people who constantly give you way more money than some attendance bullshit. Attendance numbers at Magic Fest for formats that later received bans bear that out. Well, great. I'm so glad you're concerned about that. I mean, they don't want Magic Fest to fail, and they don't want Channel Fireball to lose money because they're the last ones hosting it. But mathematically, they should just heavily subsidize the tournaments and then make the ban decision and keep gathering money from the normal sources like Arena and paper. They could cut them a check for $100,000, which is like almost the cost of the whole damn tournament, I would think. And they would still lose less than $100,000 by banning something at the last second and having, 10% of the crybaby, I can't run my net deck, I'm not going to show up to the tournament, attendance is terrible. If they would have banned Oko, just the sponsors at the tournaments, who theoretically some of them might pay per viewer based on some statistics about how many people viewed it, more people would have viewed it with Oko gone, they would have made more money on the sponsor. A lot of this is time delayed, but it's just generally true. And then they could have handed that or a percentage of that to Channel Fireball to make up for the attendance differential. I guarantee it would have. So their logic on that is beyond bullshit. They're still like esports, attendance events. It's like 0.1% of the community, okay? F*** off about Magic Fest. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. We understand that there is value to players knowing in advance when ban restricted changes can or cannot happen, but as Magic continues to grow, this change will help us strike a better balance of providing the best play experiences at the right pace. We want to emphasize that this will not result in a difference in the number of changes or the philosophy behind them, only when we choose to implement those changes. So I don't know how many there are a year, like, I feel like it's not 12. I think they're like every 6 weeks or something. So we should expect about that many. So whatever, they're just going to move them to dodge tournaments, which, I mean, I guess at the end of the day is not a terrible move. It's just, my idea was to just completely ignore the tournaments. When players are leaving in large amounts, F&M attendance is down week after week, and there's a clear problem. ban it and ignore the tournaments. Like, not, oh, we'll wait another 2 weeks. No, that is not okay. So I don't agree with this at all. And you know what? I've got an idea. Stop printing broken shit in the first place. What a concept. Wouldn't that prevent all of this? Then you could schedule the ban restrict announcements for who the cares? You could put them exclusively on February 29th. Nobody cares because you wouldn't have to ban anything. We all know OCO was pushed. We all know that the testing department completely and utterly screwed up at their job once again, just like they did with Collected Company and Nexus of Fate, obviously, and Teferi and Grey Merchant and Aetherworks Marvel. I mean, those cards were just self-contained disasters. Smuggler's Copter. They would just stop with that crap. No tournaments would get ruined and nobody would stop playing the game due to it being unfun and broken. So clearly make prevention of the problem in the first place the number one priority, and the when do we schedule cleaning up this absolute shitstorm a secondary priority. Like, how about that for a concept? With all the statements I've heard about these bans in the last, couple years, these like 13 or 14 bans they've made, it just seems like they've given up. They've just said it's unavoidable. We can't test for this. We don't have enough staff or time. Oh, well. We'll just clean it up when it happens. Oh, well. We can't do good enough to make this perfect. I completely disagree. When on day one, the whole community screams, what the hell is this card? Not even day one. During the spoilers. People during the spoilers were like, Nexus of Fate, what the is this? Then that means you, since it's your full-time job and you've been designing cards and testing them for 10 to 20 to 25 years, should have had the same reaction and not printed it. No, they never said we're going to absolutely double down. It's our absolute highest priority that this stuff does not get through playtesting. They've made basically zero statements about that. Maybe like one or two, and they weren't that passionate or frequent or serious. Oh, and the changes they made did nothing because we've got more bans after they made the changes than before because they made a change to how card testing works at all, basically. Oh, and if I were to move on to Pioneer for a second, there's a secret ban in Pioneer. 2 cards were banned, but they also banned card bannings. That's right, they're banning bannings. Okay, they're actually technically restricting bannings, as they put it. Our next ban and restricted update will likely be in January. From that announcement on, where we plan to sync up Pioneer updates. I love how they call them updates. No, Band-Aids with ban all in capital. That's what they're Band-Aids. That's what I'm titling them. With the rest of our ban and restricted announcements, and expect Pioneer changes to occur at a similar cadence to the rest of our non-rotating formats. So instead of every Monday, they're gonna not ban something every Monday. They're gonna let it be a problem for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks longer than that. Cool, great, that's awesome, thanks. Oh, I missed a sentence in the above one. After they said, we want to emphasize that this will result in or not result in a difference in the number of changes or the philosophy behind them, only when we choose to implement those changes. And as always, we'll be watching and listening to community feedback, which you should be screaming at them to just playtest shit better. And to favor the 10 million or so active players over a tiny amount of pros at some bullshit tournament that nobody's going to. Like, I want people to really get those 2 messages across to them on social media. Or what the feedback at wizards.com or whatever the hell that is. On the forums, on Reddit, just go everywhere. Just blow up those 2 messages on the internet. Because they need to get a clue and they need to realize that everybody, and I'm very sure I'm speaking for everybody at this point, everybody wants those 2 things. Or at least 99% of players. Bare minimum. So make your voice heard because they are clearly listening to all their little buddy friends that they follow on Twitter that are all pro Magic players. They do not hear from the everyman, everyday Joe player nearly enough. And if they do, it's some wannabe poser pro wannabe douchebag. So anyway, moving on to the Pioneer announcement, 2 cards are banned. 1, Nexus of Fate, which I honestly didn't think they'd have the balls to do that, but yeah, that's the one people have been complaining about the most, so it makes sense. And OCO Thief of Crowns, I actually was very sure he was already banned. I know he's been banned more than once, and I thought the second time was in Pioneer. Let's see, he was banned from Standard. He was banned before that from the Brawl events on Arena. Then I think he was banned from Brawl formally by an announcement from Wizards, I think. I feel like there was a 4th one. That's why I'm so confused by this, but I guess he was still legal. Well, not no more. So literally zero surprise here. If they thought that OCO and Nexus might maybe be okay in Pioneer, then they have lost their damn minds. So it took them this long to be like, no, those inherently completely toxic cards that give zero benefit to gameplay whatsoever, zero benefit to the deck meta across the board, those might have to go too, considering they've already been banned. Well, Nexus was banned from Arena Best of One. Same thing, that's all I care about. So their wonderful cover your ass, we're not the enemies and we totally are making this on time explanation is since the last set of Pioneer changes, we've seen the metagame approach a better balance, with most of the top decks having a mix of favorable and unfavorable matchups against each other. And that's nice, that's what you want to go for. However, 2 decks proved to be outliers: Simic Food Ramp and Simic Nexus. Freaking anything. 2-color anything, 3-color anything, or 4-color anything Nexus. I don't know why they're saying Simic, but okay. And honestly, Oko isn't entirely the problem with Simic Food Ramp, it's the wolf. But over the past few weeks, Simic Food Ramp has had a nearly 60% non-mirror match win rate, and they take action at about 55, by the way. On Magic Online, and has earned more than twice as many 5-0 league finishes than any other archetype. So if you were to do that as an absolute percentage, it wouldn't look that bad. But when you're looking at, the next closest competitor, it beat it by double the margin? Holy shit, something gotta go. So it has favorable matchups against most of the other top decks and no strongly unfavorable matchups. Yeah, the deck's unbeatable. I mean, duh, we knew this when it was in Standard. In considering possible changes to bring the deck in better balance with the rest of the field, Oko Thief of Crowns stands out as a powerful threat that is difficult to answer and shores up many natural weaknesses of ramp decks. You think? You really think your opponent could be expected to beat that deck when it's also a ramp food healing giant creature deck with like X creatures that scale by time? You thought that the opponent having just an army of vanilla 3/3s instead of what their deck actually plays would maybe beat that? Really? Because it won't. Especially when they finally bring out something good instead of turning it into Elk, you just steal it. Yeah, whoever designed Oko should be fired. They cannot be trusted to design cards, period. It is that simple. So anyway, in addition, Oko Thief of Crowns appears in several of the other strongest decks and would likely continue to contribute to metagame balance problems long term. It's like they're like discovering this for the first time. Have you heard of this format called Standard? Because you could have just looked there and been like, you know what, Oko's gotta go too. Bitch gotta go. So therefore, we are banning Oko Thief of Crowns. Wow, what a brave and controversial stance to take. Thanks, Wizards, for your bravery on this. And banning it like 6 weeks late. The Simic Nexus deck has had the second highest win rate and a number of 5-0 league finishes among top decks. So not really better than them, but among them. As Simic Food Ramp was one of the Simic Nexus's deck's only unfavorable matchups among top decks, we're taking the additional step of banning Nexus of Fate. The potential for Nexus of Fate decks to lead to frustrating play patterns and long matches is an additional factor in this decision. Honestly, that should have been the only factor. Remember the deck called Eggs? It was banned literally just because it was ruining tournaments because the turn would go on for 50 minutes. Like, you couldn't end the turn, you couldn't end the games. And it was ruining FNM, it was ruining tournaments. So given the continued improvements in the metagame health and the upcoming holidays, our plan is to not make further changes until the next year. The next update for Pioneer will be Monday, January 6th. And just to reiterate, the next Pioneer ban announcement is on Monday, January 6th. There will be an unknown date for the January ban restricted normal announcement, and then after that, the Pioneer bans will be synced up with them. So they are basically, after January, getting rid of bans in Pioneer. The weekly bans, I should say. So they're restricting bannings. Well, what does the community not like? 1, Oko, 2, Nexus, and 3, card bannings. I don't know, I enjoy them. Well, I gotta rebuild my overpriced, overpowered net deck that I can just run on autopilot and crush everybody with unfairly. This is so unfair to me. Attention all net deckers. Shut the f*** up. You're the problem. Play a different game if you can't handle it like an adult. And if you didn't see these bans coming, that maybe your deck might be under a little bit of scrutiny and the writing wasn't on the wall or the internet, then you are legitimately too stupid to play Magic. If you're ever unsure about whether or not your deck and some cards in it might be on the chopping block for the ban restricted announcement, I got my fingers in that pulse. I will tell you. So, I mean, honestly, all we have to look forward to is less frequent bannings, more times with broken cards, and just another bad philosophy for choosing bans and when to do them. So this is all bullshit, and they should have banned Cavalcade. Screw Standard, it's still not in a healthy enough place to be really actually fun to play. It's close. I mean, it's as close as we've gotten. Like I said, I give it like a 4 out of 10, but it's a couple cards away from being there yet. So mid-January, hopefully they ban Cavalcade and a couple other things that are really annoying. I really should make a list. Probably something relating to adventures that needs to be taken down a little bit of a peg. And honestly, my entire Candy Cane deck should just be banned. That thing, I'm the first to admit it. Just ban the double strike trampler. I'm literally the only person on the planet that plays it, but my win ratio with it lately has been like 90%. I'm in Platinum Tier 1, and I've literally been just like playing the like cast 20 red spells and then leaving and going to play GTA 5. I basically just don't have any losses. Oh, and honestly, my other deck, they should probably just ban Mass Manipulation. I mean, that is just game ending. So yeah, like Agent of Treachery or whatever, he's got to go. There's a couple others, that would really be nice. And then Standard would be just absolutely amazing. But I think they're holding off because there have been like kind of too many bannings lately. Although in my opinion, not enough. But just generally, they don't want to rub too many people the wrong way. And we're pretty close to the release of a new set, which might maybe shake things up. Maybe. So thanks for watching. Let's have a little fun in the comment section. What card or cards do you want banned the most from Standard? Just card name, hit submit, let's go. Maybe a Y if you really want. And then if you see one that you agree with, thumb it up. So this should be like kind of like an unofficial voting system with all write-ins, I guess. It should be interesting after about a day scrolling through the comment section. So feel free to stop back and take a look at it. So leave your opinion down below, and I will see you guys next video.